we have Professor Mahesh K. He's a professor of pediatric cardiology at Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, that is in Cochin, Kerala. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to answer our questions, sir. I welcome you.
Thank you, Manan. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'll try to answer your questions to the best of my abilities. COVID is a new disease, and we are all in the process of learning and discovering new things every day. So yeah, let's get into it.
Sure, sir. My first question is how to keep young children healthy during the lockdown.
Okay, so health is obviously jaan hai to jahan hai, right? So
Yes,
health
sir.
is the most important asset that all of us have. It is much more important than all the money in the world and all the material things in the world. And staying healthy at any point of time, particularly during the pandemic, is a larger holistic thing. It depends upon so many things, which includes your physical health, mental health, emotional health. Okay. So we all know that, taking a good diet, drinking enough water, taking enough rest, sleeping enough, all of this is important for your physical health. And I think most of you as children are taken well care of by your parents, and they give you nutritious food. They advise you to drink lots of water, have a balanced diet, which irrespective of whether you're a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian, have a balanced diet that meets your nutritional requirements in terms of the calories, the vitamins, proteins, minerals, etc. that you have an intake. It's very important to maintain a balanced diet. It's also important to, make sure that your metabolism is working well by ensuring that you eat your meals on time so that your body is in tune with when it is getting its fuel. So the body adapts well to that. So you should have a balanced meal. You should have your meals on time. 70% of our body is made of water. So it's very important to drink enough water. Okay, so many a times we forget to drink water in the middle of all our activities. It's very, very important to keep yourself well hydrated. Sleep is the time when all the repair processes happen in the body. And you need a good continuous period of sleep for all the servicing that happens every day in your body.
Yes.
The damaged cells being replaced, newer cells being formed, the damaged areas being repaired. All that happens during sleep. That's why it's very important to have good regular sleep. And as children, you should have at least 8 hours of good continuous sleep every night. And it doesn't help by just having snatches of naps here and there and being active in the night on computers or social media. You need a continuity of sleep. Okay, only then can the repair processes be completed. So this is with regard to physical health, but at the same time, we must also remember that there is as much an importance to mental and emotional health also. This has been particularly tough in the last 1 year because most of you have been off the school and or colleges. It's been very difficult to do all the learning and teaching at home. So it's been tough. You've been away from your friends, from your other loved ones, locked up at home. So it's very important that despite all these challenges, we try our level best to keep ourselves emotionally and mentally healthy by,
Yes.
Involving yourself in productive work, things that really interest you, that engage you. So it's very important to do that. And even your relationships with your parents and grandparents, whoever you are staying with in your homes, it's very important to have good, strong, nice, loving relationships and maintaining those so that your emotional and mental health is also taken care of.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And all these factors become even more important in the times of COVID because this baseline health is what will help you, keep you protected against getting infected. And in case one gets infected, this will also protect you from, getting sick or having complications.
Yes, sir. That is some really great advice. I feel that we have talked about health in general and health in pandemic, which is very important because at this point we are suffering through multiple dimensions. We are suffering because the contagion is spreading outside and we are stuck inside. So I really hope that your tips can help people like me, young people, to keep fit, keep healthy and get through this pandemic. So coming on to
Yeah,
my
just one more thing, exercise. Exercise is also
exercise.
very important part of this whole thing because especially when locked up at home, you're not having your usual play time, your playground time, a gym time, etc. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
very important to build in a bit of exercise into your daily regimens and make sure that you have a fixed time for some good physical activity during the day. It could be something that you could easily adapt to and you could do at home.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So coming on to my second question, the brutal second wave of the virus has shown to be much harsher towards children, and there is projections for it for the third wave being more harsh. So at this point, how can children take extra precautions, or even should they? What is your opinion?
So, Manan, you see, when COVID first came, especially in the first wave that came in last year, most people, including all the scientists and the doctors, most of us felt that children are relatively protected. And it was seen to be affecting mostly people who were much older, say more than 60, more than
Yes,
70. As the age went up, the risks were going up. And it was seen that in children, you weren't seeing much symptoms and you were not seeing much of a problem. So, but nevertheless, because the whole world was being very protective, so the children were also being protected. There was directives, that young children should be kept at home and not allowed to go out, etc., etc. Schools closed down. So children remained largely protected. But towards the end of last year, what has happened is that there has been what we call pandemic fatigue. People are all tired of sitting at home.
yes,
People are all tired of wearing masks and not meeting. So, and generally, particularly in India, as it seemed to be like doing okay, we seem to be doing okay. And so there was a general sense of relaxation and people began to drop their guard. So what this also resulted in is that more and more vulnerable children were actually being exposed to COVID. Usse pehle they were being anyway protected because they were all staying at home and everybody was taking a lot of care. But as the care dropped, there were more number of children getting exposed. That is one factor. Second factor that's been happening is that this virus has been mutating. So every single human being in which the virus gets in, so the human being is the host for the virus. Each
yes, sir.
host can provide an opportunity for the virus to change itself, to mutate. Okay, you hear of these specific variants like the UK variant, South African variant, or the Indian variant, but there can actually be millions of variants which can all grow within human bodies. And as the virus mutates, it tries to ensure its own propagation, and it sometimes becomes much more lethal, begins to act in different ways, begins to find its own ways to bypass vaccines, etc., etc. So now in the current way, we are seeing that many more children are now falling ill with both acute COVID as well as longer term complications or little longer complications of COVID. Both things we are seeing now much more than what was happening in the last year. Like I
Yes,
said, it is because of this combination of factors. One, more children are being exposed. The infection has also spread more widely, so it is there in more homes, and the children in those homes are also getting exposed. And thirdly, the virus itself is also changing. So the
yes,
way to protect children from COVID remains exactly the same that what has been advised over the last year and a half. So this virus basically spreads through, it's a respiratory virus, right? And it can
yes, sir.
only exit the body or enter the body only through the mouth and the nose.
Yes, sir.
And how does that happen? It is either by breathing in or by touching a surface which has the virus and touching your mouth and nose. And now it is increasingly being understood that it is largely the transmission is airborne. Pehle bol rahe the droplet infection. Droplet infection means you have to be near enough, like somebody
Yes,
sneezes,
sir.
coughs in your presence, and the large droplets that have the virus, either you inhale them directly or they fall on the surface and you touch them and touch yourself. Which is why there was all this focus on, social distancing, having 6 feet distance, washing your hands, etc. But now it has been seen that even if you are in a shared room, the room may be a large room. An infected person may be quietly breathing in one corner of the room, but another person at the other end of the room can still get infected.
Yes, sir.
And this is what has, brought on more and more evidence that SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 is largely airborne. So it's very, very important to protect your airways from getting infected. So
Yes, sir.
any situation where you are likely to be, or you have even a little bit of risk of being exposed to somebody who has COVID, the best way is to one, avoid getting into that situation, which is by staying home unless one is going for some necessary activities.
Yes.
Number two is wearing the masks wherever one is in a strange environment out of one's home, indoors. Okay. Outdoors are definitely better than indoors because being airborne, if you're outdoors, there is more, kind
Yes.
of dilution of the air. But still, it is still possible that if you're in close proximity with others for a long enough time, it is still possible to get infected. Okay. So the general care remain the same. You have to follow masking. You have to follow the principles of, staying away from people as far as possible, except your most trusted group, which is your parents, your own family with whom you are habitating. With them also, you have to say that in order to keep you protected, they need to stay protected themselves.
Yes.
Children are at home, but the parents are going out and not following the required safety practices. Then even these children who are staying perfectly at home, they will also get exposed, and that is increasingly happening.
Yes.
So the whole family unit and the society has to understand that we need to protect the vulnerables, and now we know that children are also vulnerable, and we need to take all these measures to protect them.
Yes. Those are some very valuable points. Thank you. I what I from what I understand is that at this point for young children, the main responsibility lies on the parent because the parent has more incentive to go out. So parents need to be more careful, follow all protocols, maybe take a bath when they come home or anything to prevent the spread of the virus inside their own homes. So now that we've talked about keeping children safe and we have talked about them being more susceptible to the virus, we've seen another complication arising in children, which is the multi-system inflammatory syndrome. What to look out for and how to limit the exposure in kids for this.
Okay, so MISC, or the multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, is a new entity. Something like this didn't exist prior to, say, April of last year. So in April of last year, in the European countries, particularly in UK, Italy, etc., they started to observe a strange phenomenon that when COVID in its first wave was peaking in those societies, about 4 to 5 weeks later, children were falling strangely sick. And the sickness was a little strange because they were not really, having acute COVID, but they were coming down with fever, sometimes with rashes, and with dysfunction or malfunctioning of multiple organs in their bodies, which included their heart, their liver, their kidneys, etc. So initially it was considered very strange as to why this is happening. But then the scientists and the doctors started connecting the dots, and they could figure that this was happening about between 3 to 6 weeks after COVID had reached a certain peak in those societies.
Yes.
And then further studies have shown is that what happens is that when children get exposed to COVID-19, especially during the first wave, most of them were completely asymptomatic. Even if they were infected, they were not really showing much symptoms of COVID. But approximately a month after they got exposed to COVID, they were going into this kind of a syndrome where they were having unexplained fever, and sometimes children would just collapse. Their heartbeats would come down or become very fast. Their heart pumping would go down, etc. So what happens here is that in children, even if they are not affected severely by acute COVID, the exposure to the virus triggers an immune response in them, which is a delayed immune response. And it is a hyper response. So you know that whenever an organism enters our body, we have an immune system that fights it, right? So sometimes in these children, what we are seeing is a delayed hyperimmune and hyperinflammatory response where a lot of antibodies are produced in the body, and these begin to attack the body's own organs and tissues. And children were seen to be particularly vulnerable to this. So these antibodies would go attack the heart, the liver, the kidney, the brain, the abdominal system, and suddenly, so that's why it's called multi-system inflammatory syndrome. So it is inflammation and it is multi-system, involves multiple organs of our bodies. And it is very, very important to identify this in time, because if it is identified in time and we seek medical help, it can be fully treated by using very specific medications called the intravenous immunoglobulins and intravenous steroids, which can cut that immune response. But if treatment is not provided on time, these children are at high risk for, having significant enough organ damage to actually even lose their lives. So now over the last 1.5 years of the pandemic, we have seen this phenomenon occurring in every single society, including in India. In India, from Bombay, some of my colleagues reported this in a number of children in, by June, July, August. In Kerala, when we peaked in September, October, after that, from November, December onwards, we've been seeing lots of children coming with this. And in the second wave, I think we expect a lot more children to actually come down with this. So we have to stay alert to identify
Yes.
this in time and treat it effectively.
Yes, sir. Thank you for all of that information. It really makes it clear about the dangers we are facing in this second wave. And with adequate knowledge, we'd be better armed to prepare and to face them effectively. So now I come to the big question of vaccines. We all are desperately waiting for vaccination. We all want to start our lives again. But in India, especially at this point, vaccination for children is a far off dream. So, COVID vaccines and kids, what do you think we need to know?
So vaccination is perhaps the most important thing other than masks, which is going to help us end this pandemic, right?
Yes.
So the vaccines will basically, give us a trigger which allows our body to form our defense systems against the virus. So that is what all vaccines do. And so if we have a large scale vaccination combined with everybody following COVID appropriate behavior and masking properly, we can easily get rid of this pandemic. Now, there are logistical issues also with getting the vaccine to everybody, right? So now when these vaccines were manufactured last year, so this has been an unprecedentedly fast, creation of vaccines. Normally vaccine creation and rolling out takes years together.
Yes.
But here science has really pushed its limits to, bring it out much faster because it is so urgent. So whenever a vaccine is coming out, they first need to do these trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, and show the data that these vaccines are indeed effective and that they are safe. So they need to prove all this, particularly the efficacy and the safety. So when they do these studies, they select population subgroups and then give this vaccine to them and then study them. So in the initial pre-rollout period of the vaccine assessments, it was all done in adults over the age of 18 years. So when the vaccines were all launched, they were all essentially launched for people over the age of 18 years who were the subjects for the study. Children, pregnant women, women who were breastfeeding, they were not included in these studies. So we don't really have strong data on what happens when we give vaccines to children. So that is one of the things which stops us from, suddenly opening it up for children, because we don't yet have scientific data that
Yes.
What happens to children when we give them. Does it protect them? Does it keep them safe? Does it have any other side effects or complications? We are not sure. Now, there are studies that are ongoing in various vaccines across the world are being studied in a structured manner in children. Studying means you have to actually know each and every person to which it is given, and then you have to track them, and you have to gather scientific data on what the vaccine is doing for them. So that process is ongoing. So until good, robust data comes out that yes, a specific vaccine can be given safely in a particular subset of children, until then, we will still not have a decision on vaccination in children, but I'm sure that data will emerge, and as and when it comes, everybody should get vaccinated. But at the same time, what I would like to say is that do not treat vaccine as the only thing. Vaccine says zyada zaruri, much more than, even more important than vaccine, is to stay protected, wear your masks so that you are not exposed to the virus. That's very, very important.
Yes.
Even people who are vaccinated, even they need to continue doing that. You've seen that after getting vaccinated, a lot of people began to relax that, okay, now they don't need masks, and they have fallen seriously sick in the second wave.
Yes.
So it's very important to understand that vaccine is just one more tool, one more layer of protection. If suppose the vaccination for children gets delayed for whatever reasons, there is absolutely nothing to worry as long as you're following the other practices of masking, social distancing, and general precautions. If you follow, you will stay just as well protected as you would with a vaccine. And as and when the vaccine is declared safe for children to take, go ahead and take it at the earliest opportunity that you can.
Yes. Vaccination is definitely a very important part in ending this pandemic. But after talking to you, I have realized that vaccination and precautions go hand in hand. We cannot survive without the other. And we should all try to cooperate with the protocols as well as with look out for real scientific data before turning to vaccines to save ourselves from the pandemic. So now that vaccination is a slightly distant dream for young children, let's talk about the disease itself. A lot of children during the second wave came up with mild infections. How should these be treated?
Okay, so for the purpose of doctors planning out treatment for patients, which includes children, we classify the disease into its severity categories, right? So for children also we categorize it as mild, moderate, and severe. So essentially what we mean is the level of symptoms that they have.
Yes.
So by mild, what we mean is that you have, the symptoms of, fever, headache, body ache, stomach pain, sometimes diarrhea, all these things you have. At the same time, like any other viral illness, all of you had viral illnesses. So it will be like any other viral illness. At the same time, your breathing is comfortable and all your organs are working fine and your oxygen levels are all fine. That is what we call as a mild disease. So this kind of a disease should be treated like any other viral illness. There is no need to panic. There is no need to run to a hospital. One can rest at home and follow general isolation principles, because in the household, maybe the child is the only one who's affected, or maybe a child and the parent is affected, whereas another parent and a sibling may be unaffected, right?
Yes.
So there should be priority ki jo unaffected hai, you keep them protected. How do you keep them protected? By going into isolation yourself. So whoever is infected goes into isolation by themselves and the others stay away so that you don't transmit the infection. And then the illness is treated like any other viral illness, with paracetamol for the fever or body ache, lots of water. And if you have, headache or something, you can take a small dose of a painkiller. So just general management. Nothing specific needs to be done. And God willing, as happens in almost 80% of children going through COVID, it will just pass off as a mild illness. Okay.
Yes.
We call it moderate when, in addition to all this, you begin to have some features of this, the dreaded COVID pneumonias, which means your lungs begin to get affected. So you begin to see the children breathing faster. So depending upon the age, we have certain, criteria. How fast should our breathing be? So according to that, we look at that according to the age of the child. If the baby is breathing too fast for the age, then that means that there is some amount of COVID pneumonia beginning to happen. And at the same time, your oxygen levels are maintained, above 90%. Then we call it moderate. And but if something like this is happening, then we need to escalate care. Preferably, one should be under a medical supervision. Need not be a very hi-fi hospital license setup, but at least some kind of a basic dedicated COVID care facility is what we would recommend instead of home, so that we can actually monitor this very carefully and escalate care if we need. Severe is when, things take a dangerous turn. Oxygen levels begin to fall because the lung damage is more extensive. That kind of treatment requires the highest level of care in, say, a tertiary care hospital, that has good ICU and specialized care, etc. But for vast majority, it will all be the mild disease, which can be easily managed at home. Only thing is that even after a mild disease has become all fine, the parents and the families need to continue to watch out for the occurrence of MISC, which can happen almost a month later.
Yes.
So any child, whether he's had mild, moderate, severe disease, or maybe has remained asymptomatic while all the other family members have been positive, one needs to watch out for the next 1 to 2 months that they continue to stay healthy.
Yes. So thank you, sir, for that explanation. It really makes it clear the levels of infection that we are seeing in children. In continuation to this, is the level of transmission of the virus different in children and adults?
It is believed sometimes that children are super spreaders. One of the reasons why that was also believed is particularly during the first wave was that, children were largely asymptomatic. And because they were asymptomatic, they were moving around a lot more, and they were able to pass on the infection also more rapidly. And in some structured studies also, they were able to show that children were, despite being asymptomatic themselves, were capable of spreading the infection to a lot more people. And there was
Yes,
a
sir.
possibility of children being super spreaders. But in any case, I think it depends upon many factors, not just about being
Hmm.
a child. It depends upon what we call as the host factor, which is anybody. I mean, anybody can be a super spreader, right? Across the
Yes.
ages. So there's a host factor. Then the kind of the viral strain that has got into them. Some viral strains are more infectious than the others, right? And then the
Yes.
environment in which the child is. The child is with multiple people versus a child is alone with, a single parent or just two parents. So all these factors come into play. At the end of the day, what we have to understand that is that any human being who harbors the virus is capable
Hmm.
of passing it on. Okay, so the effort should be that that transmission should be stopped by taking all the due care with masking and isolation, etc., so that we try to cut down the transmission as much as possible.
Yes, sir. That is a very good statement, that our effort should be to contain the spread of the virus anyhow, regardless of whether it's a child or an adult, because anyone can be a carrier.
Correct.
On this note, when we look at RT-PCR tests, we have noticed that there is a rise in negative RT-PCR reports, especially in the second wave, for children who still are showing symptoms and even adults. What should we exactly do in this situation?
So in the current circumstance, if there is the overall setting for COVID infection, that you know that you've been exposed to somebody who's COVID positive, and you're beginning to have the symptoms which are very much COVID-like, but you test RT-PCR negative, one should still consider oneself like a positive patient
Positive.
and
Yes.
take all the due precautions. Because these tests, at the end of the day, in the best case scenario, the RT-PCR has a sensitivity of something like 67%,
Hmm.
which means that in the best case scenario, it picks up about 67% of those who are truly positive. You may still miss 33%, right?
Yes.
And now, as the virus keeps changing and mutating, there are more chances that some of these strains may escape the ways in which the test actually detects the virus. Okay, so we do not necessarily have to bind us. Of course, when we get an RT-PCR positive, we are sure as to how we are going to manage it. But even if you are negative, but you are in the environment where everything else looks like it is COVID, one should treat it as COVID positive and accordingly manage. Many times it happens that on a repeat RT-PCR, one becomes truly
Hmm.
positive.
Yes.
And this, sensitivity rate is much lower on the antigen tests also. So, even lesser than RT-PCR. Okay, so we take all these test reports with a pinch of salt. Ultimately, the medical decisions are not just based on one lab report, but on a multitude of factors, which include the symptoms, the history, the environment, the overall circumstances, aided by the lab reports.
Yes. So, absolutely, that is a very important thing. All of us should remember that just because we have a tested RT-PCR negative, or our antigen positive antigen test is good, that doesn't mean that we are free of the virus or we are not
Correct.
carrying it. We should take all
Correct.
precautions, especially if we find ourselves in a spreading situation.
Correct.
So, in the continuation to this question, we are seeing medication for COVID. We are seeing different kind of medicines come in fashion, if I may say, and then disappearing when ICMR or WHO is putting out scientific reports that they are not as effective or not particularly suited to this disease. So, in this situation, what medication should be given to a COVID positive patient, or a negative patient who has symptoms, or an asymptomatic patient?
So, like I said, again, the treatment depends upon
On
the
the,
severity of the disease. In
yes.
mild disease, one needs absolutely no COVID medications. It's
Yes.
just supportive care. And in addition, we give multivitamins, particularly vitamin C and zinc have been shown to have protective effect in COVID, and also
Yes.
being replaced with vitamin D. So now vitamin D is a very important part of our overall, body needs. And usually our body manufactures it in sunlight. But nowadays, since most people are staying indoors, even including children, so the vitamin D levels may be low. So supplementing vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc is what we generally advise to everybody. And for mild disease, other than that, all one needs is paracetamol or any other symptom medications.
Yes.
Only when one goes to categories of moderate and severe does it require any escalated medications. Some people do give antibiotics also in the mild phase. It's not really necessary unless we strongly suspect there is a bacterial infection also. And in
Yes.
children with mild disease, there is no role for any other medication that we talk about. Various kind of antibiotics, various kind of antiparasitic agents that are being given to adults. In children, we have to be particularly cautious not to overuse these drugs because we don't have enough data on their safety in children. So we should avoid any kind of self-medication, etc. during these mild disease. Moderate and severe disease anyway is going to be under medical supervision.
Yes.
And if at all, the medications would be given under medical supervision. And there also, many of these drugs that are, like you said, in fashion, like remdesivir, tocilizumab, etc., they don't have any data in children. And in selected cases, a doctor may give them because, he feels that the weight of evidence is towards, giving it. But otherwise, there is no strong scientific evidence that it would help. There are some other drugs like corticosteroids, either orally or intravenously or inhaled, which have been shown to have benefit across age spectrums in COVID-19. And they may be used as per medical discretion. And then beyond that is oxygen therapy, which if the oxygen levels are significantly dipping, then one needs to give oxygen. Initially, it is just oxygen by mask or nasal cannula, and then if the need is more, then you need to give oxygen by pressure, which is called non-invasive ventilation. And then for people who really worsen even beyond that, then you have to go into full ventilation.
Yes.
So that's the way it happens. But I think it is particularly in children, one has to be careful about what medicines to use and in what circumstances, and should definitely do it only under direct medical supervision and advice.
Yes. I think we should all understand this information and not run after medicines when we test positive, because we are not doctors at home. We are not medical personnel. We cannot take the patient's life in our own hands by WhatsApp forwards. So I feel that we should be very cautious and follow the scientific data that is being put out there by respectable and trusted institutions.
Absolutely.
So, sir, in the second wave, we have seen many more families affected than ever before. During these times, parents have a lot of anxiety about their children. And if I could ask some questions about them, the first would be, can parents who are negative be with their child who has tested positive?
So if the parent has previously not been infected and is still negative, but their child is positive, what they need to understand is that they themselves are also vulnerable to get the infection. So they can be with the child, because if it's a small child who needs taking care of, unlike an adult, you can't just lock up the child in a room, right?
Yes.
So a child does need a caregiver. And when we talk about a child, it could be an infant, it could be even a newborn or an infant or a toddler or a slightly older child incapable of taking care by themselves. So obviously they need a caregiver. So, but this caregiver, if he or she is negative, should try their best to stay negative. And again, the principle is very simple, Manan. The virus at the end of the day can only enter your body through your respiratory tract.
Yes.
So if you're taking care of a child or any other person who is COVID positive, make sure that you mask properly. And there comes a big issue with masking properly. You see that, I'm sitting in the hospital and I'm wearing this, very, very obvious mask, which looks probably scary to other people. But I'm wearing it because I'm trying to take the maximum precautions to keep myself safe. So now when we talk of wearing masks at home, many people just wear a cloth mask. Rural in India, people are just wearing a dupatta, just some fancy cloth mask or a mask which is worn loosely. That doesn't help at all.
Yes.
So you need to understand that this virus is getting transmitted through very small particles. And the mask that you wear has to prevent those particles from entering your nose and mouth. How do you do that? You have to wear a mask which is certified to or has the physical properties to block off those particles. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So as a standard, we say the size of the particles being 0.3 microns. No, so most of what do you mean by N95 mask? N95 mask simply means that it is able to block 95% of particles that are more than 0.3 microns. That is what an N95 mask means. Okay. And in addition, it creates a proper seal around your face so that air doesn't come in from all the sides.
Yes.
Many times when you're wearing a mask, you're just wearing it loosely, but air is coming from the sides, from the cheeks, from the bottom, from the chin, and ultimately unfiltered air is entering your nose and mouth, right?
Yes, sir.
So important, it's very, very important that you should be masked properly, which is why recently government has said double masking.
Yes, sir.
Double masking, what they mean is to add one layer of safety, but double masking also, you have to have at least one safe mask, at least one 3-layer surgical mask, which has the physical properties to block off 0.3 micron particles. Uski upar up, you can wear a cloth mask. So that is a double mask.
Yes.
Or if you have a good N95 mask, wear it. If you have a super secure mask like mine, wear it.
Yes.
So when you are in contact with anybody who's COVID positive, you try to stay negative by ensuring that your airway is well protected against the entry of the virus. And you can very, very easily do this by being properly masked. Second thing, when somebody is taking care of a child like this, is to make sure your environment is well ventilated.
Yes.
So suppose this parent and this child are, staying isolated in one room. Okay, open out the doors and windows, or at least the windows to the outside. Switch on the fan, make it well ventilated, because the suspended virus in the air, they should just get ventilated and thrown out. If you keep everything closed, or if you have AC on the recirculation mode, you have a central AC at home, all the air in that particular room, which is full of the virus, will circulate throughout the home. And other people will also get infected, even outside of that room.
Yes.
Because they are not wearing the masks. Okay. So if anybody in the home, including a child, is COVID positive, all the rest of the family members make sure that they wear proper masks. Make sure that the home is well ventilated and air circulation is well maintained, so that there is minimum chances of the suspended viral particles.
Yes. That is some very good advice, sir, especially for parents who are very worried about their young children at this point. They have to remember that their staying well is more important to be the support system for the child. They need to take all necessary precautions and ensure that they are keeping safe and the child is also recovering, not that everyone falls sick in the end. So if we talk about families where there are two children, what if one child has tested negative or is asymptomatic and another has tested positive? Should they be isolated or should they be put together?
Again, the whole idea should be to keep a negative child or any negative individual, let them continue being negative. How do you do that? By reducing their exposure to the viral particles. And how do you do that? Keep them isolated from the infected people. Yes. And if it's a closed home environment, better would be to even wear masks at home. If it is possible. For young infants and all, it's very difficult to put on a mask. Then there are risks of them having asphyxia on the mask. So it's very difficult to do that with very young children or with infants. But for everybody else, that should be the thing. So basically, just have this in mind. This virus is there in the home environment. It can infect you. And the only way it can infect you is through the airway. Take all measures to protect your airways at all points of time till everybody else at home is negative.
Yes.
It's actually a very simple disease for us to, prevent ourselves from falling sick too.
Yes.
And with or without the vaccines, if we are able to follow these very basic rules of masking, distancing, ventilation, etc., we can stay protected.
Yes.
And when these doctors go into COVID wards, the mask is the most important part of the entire PPE that we wear. You've seen us wearing all kind of gear.
Yes.
But the most important thing is this mask. And same goes for all of you.
So being masked is the underlying point of the whole discussion, that we have to protect our respiratory airway. Our entry into the body is only through these respiratory organs, and we need to prevent any kind of infection through them.
Yeah, similarly, the infected patient can also throughout the virus only through
through
this.
only through this.
So that person staying masked, the other people staying masked would protect everybody.
Yes, sir. Sir, do children who have already contracted the virus, can they get positive again?
So the data is still coming in, Manan, on how long immunity lasts after a natural infection. So initially it was believed that some people even went by the principles of herd immunity, which essentially means that you get a natural infection, you build antibodies, and then you are safe. But increasingly, it has been seen that people who have been once infected can get infected again. Again, depends upon a lot of factors. How good was your own immune response when the virus entered your body? How much antibodies did you build up? How many neutralizing antibodies did you build up, which can actually neutralize a virus when it enters your body again? As of now, we know that reinfections are very much possible. A lot of people have got reinfected, particularly we've seen in healthcare personnel who are repeatedly exposed, doctors, nurses, etc., have had repeated exposures. So once infected, you can get infected, so you need to continue staying protected. ये नहीं कि मतलब once you've had infection and then you think now you are immune and you abandon precautions. No. In fact, if one gets a repeat infection, sometimes it can be much worse than the previous one, and you can have a much more exaggerated kind of an inflammatory response, which can be very, very lethal. So you need to stay well protected.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So as a final question, could you list the protocol to be followed in case a young child or teenager is infected with the virus? Something objective that the parents can follow and help the child get better.
Okay, so I think we can follow the protocols based on very general principles. So if a parent finds out that the child is infected, okay, and has tested positive, and the first thing would be that make sure that the child is well taken care of in terms of nutrition, general care, supplementation of vitamins, particularly, like I said, vitamin C, zinc, vitamin D. Make sure that the child has adequate opportunity to rest and recover. Make sure that, particularly with young children, the caregiving is continued. You have to adapt around how you do it in your home environment. How do you isolate the child and the primary caregiver while keeping the others safe? And following that, one has to have a very keen observation as to what is happening to the child.
Yes.
Be very ready to have a medical caregiver that you can, go to when there is a problem. So in the first phase, if everything goes off as a mild disease, in the mild disease, the fever, cough, whatever it is, it will slowly come down by about 4th, 5th, 6th day, and it will begin to get better.
Yes.
So hopefully majority of cases will be in the mild category. There, you just need symptomatic care. Even at this time also, make sure that you have some medical person that you can speak to, either on the phone or on a video call or on a teleconsult or something, make regular updates. At this point of time, one doesn't need any blood tests, anything, etc. But if during this period of the acute illness, the illness is more than mild, say getting to be moderate, you find that the child is finding it hard to breathe, the cough is a lot much, there are possibilities of a pneumonia happening, the fever is just not coming up, the fever is persisting as very high fever, the child is not able to eat, drink because the child is so exhausted from the illness that he's not drinking, eating, he's excessively drowsy, is having severe abdominal pain that is not, that you can't manage at home. In all these circumstances, you must reach out to for medical help. Discuss with the doctor as to what needs to be done. And if there is need for hospitalization, hospitalize. It's also probably important to have a pulse oximeter at home in these circumstances so that the oxygen saturations can be seen. And if it is falling, see, normally you should have 98, 99%. And, if it's anything less than 96, it is cause to stay very, very alert and, be very, very cautious. And for children under 90%, 100%, the child needs to be hospitalized and receive oxygen, etc. Yes. So now consider a situation where the child has had mild symptoms and is doing reasonably well and has now become okay after about 4 to 5 for 6 days. Don't drop your guard. Please continue keeping a watch, because mostly what is seen in older patients particularly is that the complications of COVID occur in the second part of the disease, which starts from say about 6th, 7th day of the illness until about the 15th, 16th day of the illness. This is when sometimes body has this hyper-inflammatory response, and you must have heard of these terms called the cytokine surge. So there's a lot of inflammatory response and a lot of inflammatory chemicals and antibodies are being produced in the body, which can cause extensive damage. So in these patients, what happens is that after the initial improvement in the first 5-6 days, then there is a deterioration again, which can be as a recurrence of the fever or other symptoms, that the child who was becoming progressively better has now suddenly started to get worse again. So this should immediately alert the parent, and they should immediately seek medical help. This is the time when we expect, complications to arise in a rare small percentage of children. And then immediately we need to do certain blood tests and definitely hospitalize so that further care can be taken.
Yes.
So both this first part of the illness, where it will be more like a common viral illness, even once that gets abated, keep a watch for it going down into a dangerous track.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir, for all of this valuable information. We are very grateful that you were able to take time out of your busy schedule and answer these questions. I hope this information will help people all over the country and in Delhi to beat the virus and come out victorious over this pandemic.